Hey, Stephen. Welcome back to
Hey,
the
buddy.
podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I think this one will be a little bit different, but I'll start it like we started the other one, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah,
For
sure.
anyone who doesn't know you, who do you say you are?
Oh, who do I say I am? I'm a person that's curious, a person that likes to learn. Um, I'm a person that likes change. I think I've learned to like change. Um, I get bored if I don't have it, I feel like. And I try to be a good person. I think that's who I am.
I like it, and I can attest to that. I
Oh,
think you
thank
do a
you.
good job.
Well, thanks. What about you? Who do you think you are? How would you describe yourself?
Um, I would describe myself as someone that's curious. It might sound like I'm stealing your answer, but I've always tried to learn things. I remember when I was younger, it didn't click for me what my nickname was until I asked my dad more recently. But
Uh-huh.
in
Wait, your
it
nickname. You have a nickname?
yeah, yeah. So like growing up, I mean, everyone like you get a nickname based on like whatever people think they associate you with. And
Right.
essentially my nickname was a teacher. Like it was, so I guess apparently when I was younger, I would always like want to teach people things or tell people things or share with them my experiences. But it didn't register to me that it was teacher because in Pidgin, or as they call it, it's like a broken English slash French, it's teacher. So it's
And
like,
that's from Cameroon.
yeah, yeah,
Pigeon, it's called.
yeah. I think it
Okay.
may be like Jamaicans or Haitians may call it like patois,
So
but
so that's kind of so
uh
it's kind of like a Creole language, kind of,
yeah, yeah, kind of
but
like
from
that.
Cameroon.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
yeah. So
Okay, interesting.
yeah, I think did I answer your question fully?
Yeah, you're talking about Pidgin, which is a language in Cameroon. And Cameroon, they speak French in Cameroon too, right?
Yes, I think the
Like
main two
that's the
languages
national language.
are French and English. It's a bilingual
Okay.
country, but the primary language I think is French outside of like your local dialects and things like that. I
Yeah,
think I read something once about maybe 250 dialects, but I can't really
that doesn't
confirm that.
surprise me. Yeah. I know my brother lived in Namibia for a while, which is in southern Africa, and there's only
Mhm.
like 2 million people that live there, but there's so many different languages.
Yeah.
He was in the Peace Corps, and like it seemed like every different Peace Corps volunteer spoke a different language because they're
Mm.
in a different part of the country, right? So my brother was in a place called Opuo where he spoke a language called Herero. I'm not
Mm.
sure if I'm saying it right, but I remember there's another guy that was kind of in the south of the country. He spoke a language where there's like clicks in the
Mm.
language.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's pretty diverse set of languages too.
Yeah.
And
What's
that
my
what's
bad, go
that?
ahead. I was gonna say what's funny about the people that have the clicks in their language, I didn't know that was a thing growing up because like
Yeah.
you know how National Geographic puts things out about interesting stories, but people think that Africa is so small or the world, like sometimes the world appears smaller than it really is, but Africa being like the biggest continent in the world versus like how people would think it. They're like, oh, did like I remember coming to the States and like third grade or fourth grade, people would be asking me, like, I'm trying to learn the language, but they're like, oh, do you live in the bush? Like, do you see the lions or do you see that? And I'm sitting here like, I grew up middle class. Like
In the
I
city,
don't,
probably, yeah.
right in the city, I don't know anyone from the bush. Like I've never seen a lion in my life. Like I've never heard people that talk with clicks. Like
Yeah.
I live as far from them, like traveling here, going from Cameroon to Paris to Georgia, Cleveland, Tennessee,
Hmm.
to as far as it would be to Namibia, possibly. Like even like if you were to say, um, I think I remember it may have been like 2010 or something. South Africa was hosting the World Cup
Okay.
and it was like it was cold outside and someone was trying to argue that the distance from where they were in Johannesburg, South Africa was closer to the equator than we were in
No.
Atlanta, Georgia, Marietta,
Oh,
Georgia.
oh, oh, in Atlanta.
Yeah. But I mean, I think we were just north of Atlanta and Marietta. And I was like,
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure
Is it?
that's wrong. But it's like, no, South Africa is further south than
Hmm.
Marietta, Georgia is, or even like the state of Georgia. So it's like
Right.
Georgia's closer to the equator than South Africa is. And it's like they would have winters or they would have like actual, I don't know if they would have actual snow, but it's like they just have a different climate than what we
Right.
have. But like people just think Africa, Sahara, Lion King, Hakuna Matata, and it's like, no, that's just that's part of a story from someone's culture. It's not like the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Africa is really, really big place and it's very, very diverse.
Yeah,
I don't know how many languages they have there, but I'm pretty sure it's like in the thousands. You know,
I'm
like,
pretty sure because I mean
yeah,
you have 54 separate countries, and it was
yeah,
funny like even getting those right back in like high school geography, and you're just like, oh wow, like well people are like, well you got to know this stuff, you're from there, and I'm like, I've got like a
yeah,
third
there's a
grade
lot to know.
education coming coming to the US. Like I knew as much French as it taught me like by third grade, and then coming to the States was like um basically stopping to learn French like you would do in school and like
Uh-huh.
just say all we're going to focus on right now is English. And it's like,
So,
go ahead.
so what's your native tongue? Is your first language English or is it French or something else?
My first language is French, but
Okay.
my parents, I forget what the native tongue is called, but they both speak it in their
Hmm.
dialect. So they have their first language, then French, then English. So for me, it's French, then English, but now it feels like really I speak more English than I do French.
Okay, got it. But do you feel like you're fluent in French still?
If I speak it for about a month or a month
Okay.
to 3 months, I would be
It comes back.
more fluent. Yeah, but right
Yeah.
now I'd say no. I'm definitely most fluent in I'm more fluent in French in English than I am in French.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel with Spanish. Like if I'm immersed in it somewhere for a while, it feels a lot more fluid. And I'm not fluent in it.
Yeah.
But definitely like I feel more confident if I'm immersed in it somewhere for a
Mm.
couple of weeks. You know, it just kind of comes back to you and you start to like pick up on the words, the accents and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, almost like riding a bike,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
Well, what's funny about that, I remember like I came to the US when I was like 7, so I did about half of second grade
Hmm.
and like from January to the summertime, and then like did some ESOL classes, and by 5th grade in Georgia, one of the language requirements were Spanish. So like we had to take Spanish, and the teachers kept trying to convince me, "Oh, it's just like French. Like it's similar pronouncements and things like that. It's like it has the same root." But I
The
think
same,
I
yeah, it's
about
Latin
right,
language,
but it's
but
like I'm pretty sure I about failed like Spanish trying to compare it to French, and I'm like, these two things are just
no.
not aligning.
Yeah, yeah, they're very different. French is still a Latin language, but I think it's kind of far on the spectrum
Mm,
of Latin languages. Like Portuguese is definitely a lot closer to Spanish than French is.
yeah.
Like when I went to Brazil a couple of weeks ago, like I just spoke Spanish in Brazil and everybody understood me,
Wow.
you know. So yeah, then they speak back in Portuguese. I didn't understand anything, but
That's
but
funny.
yeah, yeah, it was kind of nice. Like I got by. It was really easy to get by there, tell people
Mm.
what I needed or whatever. So, but and then you mentioned living in Paris, is that right?
No, no, just going through Paris in order to get to
Oh,
like your connecting flight in order to get to
okay.
the US.
Got it. So you're 7 when you got to the US.
Yeah,
Yeah, how was that? Was it like a culture shock for you as a 7-year-old? I mean,
for
I'm
sure.
sure they're very different places. Maybe growing up middle class helped, you know, because you probably have more access to like American media and stuff, and you maybe had an idea of what you're getting yourself into. But like, what was your experience in that regard?
It's definitely a culture shock. It was interesting because it felt like a miracle. It's like our family miracle story my dad likes to tell because he
Hmm.
came here for seminary school, and
Mm,
I think he was here for 5 years. So basically, like I didn't really know my dad like for a good 5 years. Like I met him consciously like when I was 4. So I came
mm,
over with my mom at 4
wow.
years old for like a month to visit, and the main thing I came away with was because like he would get up in the mornings and like clean the floor or maybe do it on the weekend. So I was like, "Oh, my dad, he cleans floors." And then one of the teachers was like, "No, your dad's a minister. He's a pastor." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like I don't I don't quite understand everything, but like coming to the US, I think we flew into Atlanta
Uh-huh.
and like we had like this big reception from the church because essentially the way my dad tells the story was that we like he went to Memphis, Tennessee in order to get the visa paperwork and everything like that, and is for is it 5 people or 6 people. So basically you go to request visas for 6 people and then the
Hmm.
turnaround time was like within a week. And if you know anything
Wow,
about
really?
the visa process, it usually takes months, if not years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like coming to America, it was like I think we left Cameroon like on a Wednesday night and then we
Uh-huh.
arrived here on a Thursday because it's maybe like a 15-hour flight.
Okay.
And um it's kind of weird to describe because it's like definitely culture shock moments because you're used to seeing things on TV. Like you see America kind of painted a certain way and then
Hmm.
like you don't think that there are any poor people in America. And like everyone that's overweight is like, man, they got a lot of rich people here because like where we come from, it's like if you're like you're overweight, then you know where
You
the
got
food
money?
is. Yeah, you got
Yeah.
money. But it's like here, obviously the food's made a little bit different. It's
Yeah, big time.
processed and things like that, which is it's good for getting more food to more people, but now you're kind of giving more poison to more people
Yeah.
and not necessarily the right foods. And like language was different, but people received it really well at the airport. Is almost like having an entourage. And then I think we came here December 11th, 1997.
Okay.
And then obviously within a few weeks, you're celebrating Christmas in the US for the first time. And then Tennessee gets snow. And I think they got maybe 6 inches of snow that year. So it's like seeing snow for the first time, almost like 6 inches to a foot. And
Oh
it was
yeah.
like, wow, this is wild. Like,
Yeah, I bet that was amazing coming from
yeah,
Cameroon where like because it's hot in Cameroon, right?
yeah.
Such like
And we left during the dry season. So it's like it's
okay.
that dry heat. And a lot of places don't have like air conditioning and things like that. Like some places are well off. And
Uh-huh.
I'm kind of most of the memories that I have of it now is from visiting back in 2015 here recently, which is almost 10 years now. But um yeah, the climate's definitely different. Like feeling cold for the first time and then you got to bundle up. So like spending Christmas in the US was different where you had a lot of gifts and things like that from friends and family and very soon like your siblings start going to work because at the time that we came to the US, I was the youngest in the family
Hmm.
and my younger brother's born the following year and there's an
Okay.
8 year gap between us, but it's like um the dynamics were kind of different where my oldest brother he was like high school senior age going into college the next year and then my
Uh-huh.
sisters that follow him they were all going to high school and then within the next year um we're moving towns and but I mean to not to ramble too much, but kind of going to your original question, definitely like a culture shock, but it was like we always moved as like a family or as one kind of like stick together, stay close, and you you start to like figure out how people interact and some people are friendly and other people are like maybe standoffish, but
Hmm.
it was interesting. But
Yeah.
it was good. It was a good experience.
And so you said your dad was in the States for 5 years before you went to the
Yeah,
States?
I believe
Okay, I didn't know that.
he did seminary school at Lee University. It's one of the I think Christian colleges that's well known for people that want to do training to become like if you want to go into ministry and you want to
Right, right.
be like officially licensed to where people are like, okay, hey, here's your backing. Like you would get an engineering degree. That's one of the places a lot of people go.
Okay. And these that's Baptist religion or which religion is it? Which branch of
Um,
Christianity?
I think it was Church of God.
Church of
but
God. Okay.
I don't know if they I want to say that's the church that he was associated with a lot. And I think we were either Presbyterian growing up or Pentecostal. There's so many
Okay.
denominations, half the time
There
I'm
is.
like, I don't know which one's which.
Yeah, I can even tell you all the different denominations of Christianity. There's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
But and so if you went so if your dad was in school for 5 years and you went to the States
Mhm.
when you were seven, that means he left when you were two.
Yeah.
And so between 2 and 7, you didn't have your dad there.
Mhm.
Was it? But you said that you went and saw him when you were 4
Yeah.
for like a little while. Was that like meeting a stranger? Was it like you were meeting a stranger, or did
No,
you have?
I mean, we would definitely like he would always call and communicate like throughout the
Mm,
year, and then like when
okay,
Christmas came around, he would send us gifts from the U.S. and it was always like there's always like a relationship there, but I guess it didn't feel too much like meeting a stranger from what I remember.
okay. But yeah, it sounds like he tried to maintain like a good relationship with you despite the distance, which is hard.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah. But so how was it like going back and reuniting with him?
it was fun. It was like I don't know. Hmm.
Was it like
Like
awkward in any way, or was it or was it did it feel like smooth, like natural?
I think it felt smooth. Like I don't really recall I felt like maybe I was more starstruck with like
Uh-huh.
the being in America type thing.
Yeah.
And like going back, it was like telling people like, "Oh, hey, things are like this or things are like that." Other times, um I think talking with some of my uncles, it almost seems like whenever someone comes from America, people would say it's like, "Okay, like whatever little stuff you guys are doing here, I'm going to tell you how to do it right. Like here's how we're going to run things." But um it just it was a it was an experience, so to speak, to be like,
Okay.
okay, like you're used to living one way, and then here, like people just live differently.
Yeah. And then maybe your dad was like a new authoritative figure in the family versus before it was your mom, since
What do you
since your
mean?
dad was. And so like when while you're in Cameroon,
Hmm.
like your dad was in the States studying uh to be a minister.
Hmm.
And so your mom, I assume your mom ran the household.
Yeah, yeah.
Like when you came to your States, did your dad become like a new authoritative figure? Did that
Um,
have any of?
I mean, like culturally, like the way we do things is like dad's always been the authoritative figure, but I
Hmm.
guess it is different to your point where it's like when someone is there like present physically versus like from a distance. And
Hmm.
I think there's always been the dynamic of like my mom would consult with my dad, but it definitely shift where my mom was a school teacher in Cameroon. And um growing up, I guess you could say maybe like middle class, like having tutors or like walking to school, different things like that. I was definitely like a mama's boy, you could say, where it's like I latched on to my mom being the last born. And
Yeah.
I think I would say like my mom maybe had to run a tight ship because if you think about it, she's raising five kids on her own,
Right.
but also like getting help from family friends around. Like her brothers are there. I think she has four brothers, and she was the oldest of her siblings. So she's like
Okay.
also like a big sister to them. So like being like a key person in that way, it's I think the short answer to your question is yes, like things did shift, like going from Cameroon to America and kind of
Hmm.
having to play different roles.
Yeah, and like the family dynamics as well. It's kind of
Yeah.
what I was getting at. Yeah, got it. Yeah, but sounds like your mom had a lot of help though. 'Cause you said you had some uncles back in Cameroon, so but kind of like that saying, it takes a village. You ever hear
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
saying? Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Because I mean, what's funny about Cameroon is like we lived in the city, the capital city, Yaoundé. That's where most
Hmm.
of our family is from, both my mom's and my dad's. But it's like you have your smaller villages, like your smaller cities, outside of the main city. And
Hmm.
like being able to go back and visit some of those places is like, okay, wow, it takes more. it takes more doing to get from like point A to point B, where you're either taking taxis or you're taking motorbikes where taxis can't go, and like your
Right.
infrastructure isn't as strong. So then you have to it just takes longer to get from point A to point B, but you
Yeah.
still make it work and find your way around traffic and different things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been through that quite a bit. I've been to like 40 countries, I think.
Wow.
And Namibia usually people travel by combi, so you
Mm.
have this van and they stop at each village and then like more and more people get on until eventually this van just be packed with people, there'd be
Yeah.
people sitting on each other's laps and people sitting on the floor. And yeah, it can be a different world.
Gotcha.
Uh,
I didn't realize that that's what that was called, because I think we either got on one of those or maybe like a
uh-huh.
taxi. And I just remember in one I started to panic internally a little bit because we were squeezed in there so tight. It felt like my leg was going numb, and I was like, "Oh no, I don't want to lose my leg. I don't want to be
Yeah,
paralyzed." It's like, but then once you get out, like it takes a minute, but it starts to come back. You get a little bit more feeling in your leg.
yeah, 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 yeah. You definitely get close to people in those things, literally.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and I
hilarious.
remember another thing in Namibia that was common was hitchhiking too.
Mm,
Like I hitchhiked a couple times in Namibia,
yeah.
and yeah, I remember one time we got in this car with this guy and he drove to this village. Apparently somebody else was hitchhiking too, because there's somebody else in there that he was dropping off.
Mhm.
And like he didn't charge us anything. Like he just picked us up and brought us to where we were going. But like I remember he was driving down the streets in this village going like probably 60, 70 miles an hour. I was like, oh my God, like what if like a kid runs out in front of us?
Right.
You know? Like, yeah, just the way they do things in other places can just be a little overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was back in 2013. So it was like, before that I traveled to Europe before,
Mm,
which is pretty similar to the US, obviously. But that was really like the first place I ever went that was like really different from the US.
yeah.
So yeah, I definitely had some eye-opening experiences there, but you get used to it.
Yeah. I guess did you run into anything that you weren't expecting? Like, huh, didn't think that I would see that here, or like it's just
Um,
different.
yeah, I definitely saw some weird stuff. There's Nazis there. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh,
Uh,
still.
well, yeah, well, I don't know if I should call them Nazis. They're definitely white supremacists.
Hmm.
I mean, Namibia used to be part of South Africa. I think, South Africa has that history of apartheid. So, there's white supremacist groups and there's still a lot of racial tension there.
Oh,
I
I thought
remember
you
there's
almost meant Europe for a minute, but wow. Oh,
Europe. Oh no, in Namibia, yeah.
wow. Okay.
Um, and there's white Africans. I'm sure you know
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And in Namibia, that includes in Namibia, and generally the white Africans are the ones with the most money. Not always, but
Hmm.
in many cases, And so like there's a couple of experiences that were kind of weird. One was I remember we went out one night. We went to this bar,
Hmm.
and they call them Afrikaners, the white Namibians.
Yeah.
So these Afrikaners, there's like a group of like four of them and they're all dressed up in drag. They're like dressed in dresses for some reason. So I don't know what was going on,
Oh, wow.
but but yeah, like we went to this bar and we got in a cab ride with like a black Namibian and and like they said something to this cab driver and one of the Peace Corps volunteers said something back to him, like standing up to the cab driver.
Hmm.
And so like like this Peace Corps volunteer was like arguing with these four Afrikaners and they started yelling back and like there's almost a fight, but
Hmm.
um somehow there wasn't,
Yeah.
thankfully. Yeah. And then later that same night, there's one fast food restaurant that I remember in the capital of Namibia, which is Windhoek.
Hmm.
There's a KFC there. And so and so the first time I walked into this KFC, there's
Yeah.
like a refrigerator over off to the side. It's just chock full of beer. And so like if you want to go to KFC and drink some beer, you can do it.
Yeah.
And that's also like the place that everybody goes after bars close and they get
Hmm.
something to eat.
Yeah.
And so like after the bar closed, we went there. And I walk in and they have security guards. And the security guards were black Namibians. They had a whip in one hand, like
Hmm.
a short little whip, and in the other hand they had tasers.
Ooh.
And like there's this group of Afrikaners. I can't remember how many there were. There might have been like two or three of them, but one of
Yeah.
them had this long cattle prod.
Jeez.
and he was like shooting off this cattle prod in the middle of KFC, like looking at the security guard with like this weird malicious smile, and the security guard is just like smiling back, shooting off his own taser. And it's like there's like this weird standoff. Like
Yeah.
the one guy had a cattle prod shooting it off. The guard had his own taser shooting it off, and like nothing came of it.
You're
Nothing
right.
came of it. Like I can't remember if we left before it settled down or whatever, but
It's
yeah,
just
it
a
was just
casual night.
yeah, it's just really bizarre. It's like, but like definitely you got to see like that racial tension there, just kind of differences in the that divide of the culture.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, it was pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
Very, very different place.
I guess that is eye-opening because it's like you're speaking about it going there as an adult versus like even as we're talking about me like coming to America. It's like
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember of where I was at that age, and I'm just like, huh.
Uh-huh.
And then thinking, you fast forward later when I'm like 25 going back and visiting, and it's like, okay, it is different. Like you see like different things and you see wealth discrepancies, but at the same
Hmm.
time, I was like, oh wow, like I've been doing some personal development. I see entrepreneurship. I see
Hmm.
people that are maybe struggling and maybe labeled as third world, but I'm like, you see people at 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning that are like when you're getting ready to get on the buses and things like that that take you from city to city, they're
Hmm.
selling water. Like it's the closest thing to purified water that's in like the plastic bags. And
Okay.
even like at the market and things like that, the government may have like outpriced the rent to where people instead of renting the building space is like they can't afford it. So they set up the market in front of it and you just have this giant empty building behind it. So
Really
so it's like, huh. But like going around with my uncle
interesting.
at the time, it's like things are hard. And I was like,
Yeah.
I see that. But at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, like, you're kind of here on a 10-day vacation. You're not really here to do anything or change anything about it. But like if somewhere during some time you felt led to do that, I think for me at least, I'm like, I've got to go in with a concrete plan and not just
Yeah.
kind of say, okay, I'm gonna do mission work or just kind of fly by the seat of my pants because like seeing what my dad has gone through or what he goes through doing mission work or like um I'm just like everyone's built a little different and I'm
Hmm.
thinking to myself maybe I couldn't do it to the degree that he does it and just thinking of like how much you have to travel over a period of a month versus like how much I traveled over a period of 10 days. I'm like sure like you can make adjustments and things like that but it's like yeah we're built different.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a lot of work but it's like it's almost like there's diamonds in the rough and there's beauty that you can see where you learn to look at it or look for it. But otherwise, if you're kind of conditioned to think, oh, this sucks, this is bad. I mean, yeah, there are
Yeah.
places that suck and there's how would they say like you gotta some people say you gotta make chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Or
And right, but
I was gonna say turn lemons into lemonade, but I think I
right,
like
right,
that one better.
right.
Make
But
chicken salad out of chicken shit.
yeah,
That's a good
it's
one.
like you you basically like I'm like okay yeah I guess in some cases you have to do that but obviously if you look at like right here where I'm at in South Georgia you see there are like poor cities and like
Hmm.
places where there's no there's no life in it because like young people that grow up in the area it's like you grow up in a town of like less than 10,000 people less than 20,000 people it's like I got to get out of here even less than like 50,000 100,000 people are like I got to go where things are happening. Like go towards the big cities. There's opportunities there.
Yeah.
There's jobs there. There are
Yeah.
markets, and it's like all the little stuff. It kind of withers away and dies unless you have people that are like farmers, people that want to own land and like they can start a business and like trade with people and like it's good enough to kind of keep the lights on, but after a while, it's like you want to do a little bit more than keeping the lights on.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely success. You have to have opportunity to have success.
Yeah.
It's like going to countries where there's not as much opportunity, like it just makes me wonder, like what some of the people there could have accomplished if they had more opportunity.
Right.
Because like I've met some really intelligent, resourceful people in other countries. I remember I was in Vietnam, like I met this kid working at a bar, and he was speaking English with me, like, and he just had like a straight up American accent. Like
Mm.
I thought the guy was from America.
Yeah.
So I was like, are you Vietnamese? He's like, yeah. I was like, well, I was like, you lived in the States before. I was like, where did you live? He's like, oh, I've never been to the States.
Mm.
So I was like, well, where'd you learn English? Because like you speak like you're an American.
Mm.
Like his accent was like perfect neutral American accent.
Right.
Yeah. And like that kid was like so smart. And maybe he went on to do, great things. I don't know. Like I don't know what his background was or anything, but
Mm.
uh, you know, like if you grow up in a place where you don't have the best school, maybe your parents have skills that that like they're good people and they work hard and they provide for you, but maybe they don't have skills to pass on to you that are going to make you wealthy or something.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. So I mean, definitely if you don't have opportunity where you are, you kind of have to go looking for it sometimes.
That's true.
Yeah. You said you had mentioned that like you had a certain expectation of the United States before you came here, but then like some of those expectations didn't come to fruition. You said one was like you thought fat people were like the wealthy ones. And
Yeah.
then yeah. And what else did you say? You said remind me. You
Um,
said oh that there's that not everybody in the States is rich. Like
right, right. It's
there's like
like
people in
even
poverty as well.
right, and even like understanding that like I don't know if it maybe it was naive or kind of like coming to America, it's like you look at it as the like in some cases people describe it as like oh the great white hope or something like that
Hmm.
where like a lot of the people that we went to church with were predominantly white or which wasn't a bad thing and
Hmm.
it's like racial disparity wasn't something I understood necessarily because it's like here like the history of America is a little bit different. Like you
Right.
describe apartheid around Namibia, like that's very different. Like in Cameroon where I grew up, there's obviously like colonialism across most of Africa, I think.
Hmm.
But actually having the disparity where you encounter like racial tensions or things like that, it's not as prevalent because like in Cameroon, the population is maybe like 90%, if not 98% black. But it's like
Right.
obviously you have different tribes, um different groups. There's always going to be like tensions within different groups, even if you look alike or look dissimilar. So part of the things first coming to America, I'm thinking of like, okay, you come in December and then to January, and then older siblings are like of working age, they start going to work. So I remember back like my two older siblings, brother and sister, they went to work at Walmart, and it's
Hmm.
very quickly you saw like how Walmart treats their employees, and it's funny like looking what's that 2017 minus or I don't know why I keep saying 2017. Basically 2024 minus 1997 is roughly 26 years or is my
27, I
math
think.
27 years.
Yeah.
So it's like in 27 years, if Walmart has a reputation of not treating their employees right, and it's like it just keeps going on. It's like I guess profits must be good. And I mean, I just came back from Walmart, like going and
Right.
getting some curtains and stuff for the place I just moved into. But that's one thing. Like talking with my older sister, she didn't have a positive experience with Walmart, and she's like she'll never want to shop there or like go back there or do business with them in any kind of way. But like my middle sister, I think she ended up working at Pizza Hut, which is
Hmm.
a no, actually Pizza Inn, which is like a local version of like Pizza Hut or a pizza place. And I think very soon after her, because if I was 7, the ages would have been like my youngest older sister would have been 12. So it would have been like 12, 14, 16, 18. That's the ages my siblings would be coming in at. So like basically seeing everyone kind of go to work in one way or another, try to pitch in to the household and like bring money in, and going to school trying to learn English. You're just seeing like how people treat you kind of. I think I may have mentioned this before, where they have like preconceived notions of what Africa is and Africans, and
Yeah.
like, but I mean it was like rude at first, but as an adult, as I look back on it, I'm like, oh, like people are kind of ignorant just because they've been taught ignorance. Like they don't know any better. Like some
Yeah.
people act out of like curiosity, but other people are maybe just like rude, or try to be smart Alex, something like that.
Would they ask you questions about like where you were from?
Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I remember
Was it like well-intentioned questions like for the purpose of learning, or was it more
a little bit of both.
something else? A little bit of both. Okay.
Yeah, because it's like obviously I remember more so third grade than second grade because I only did half of the year. And I think more of the attention was trying to learn English, like taking the ESOL classes. Um, I forget what that abbreviation stand for, but basically it's
English
like,
as a second language.
yeah, right,
ESL.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I liked third grade because the teacher was good. Probably one of my favorite teachers. I completely forget her name, but she was from the Midwest, a younger lady. And like if you were well behaved and things like that, you got a star on your desk throughout the week. And then if you got all 5 stars, you got to eat lunch in the classroom and watch The Price is Right. So that was that was something fun. And it was
Okay.
like people would just ask you questions out of curiosity, where it's and those questions weren't too bad, but sometimes when they're like asking you the same questions, like, did you live in the bush? Like, did you? And it's like, okay, I might not, I'm learning the language, but I can see like your intentions aren't that positive. Like, you're very, you might be
It's
well
almost
dressed, but like you have this malicious kind of smile to your face. And like,
that's what
you're always posturing kind of, even as like a third grader. It's like, I
yeah.
don't like
So
that.
so it's almost like they're making fun of you. Is that
Yeah.
what you
In,
mean?
in
Yeah.
a way. Yeah. But
Okay.
um, it's like obviously living in a smaller city like that, and also meeting some well-intentioned people that are
Right.
also different. It's like you gravitate towards the outsiders, and like you do meet some good people along the way. So that was something positive.
Yeah, that's good. But it sounds like you had a like a pretty high idea of what America was and like pretty high expectations before you went. Do you remember ever being disappointed?
Um, maybe after a while, it's like once you start realizing that America isn't everything just on TV, and that
Right.
people have actual problems, and like you go to work, like coming to America for the first time, a lot of it was you're just happy to be here, like you're happy
Yeah.
that you get a chance to participate. And then once you start running into problems where it's like growing up heavy in faith, like you would always pray, like you do morning devotions, like everything, you always turn to God. But then it's understanding that like you don't necessarily have to leave religion, but there are some things where it's like you you can talk positive, 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 but if all the actions that you're taking are bringing you negative results, it's like, okay, something something's not lining up. Like one of these
Yeah.
things is not like the other. Like I can't just be a nice guy, so to speak, and then continually get taken advantage of and throw my hands up in the air and be like, I don't know what's going on. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you must have something tattooed on your face that just says, oh, like, here's a sucker. Like, take
Yeah.
advantage of this sucker.
Right.
And it's like, oh, God, woe is me. And it's like, you either do that enough times or you watch other people do that enough times, and you're like, maybe I can find a different way to approach this. And it was
Yeah.
funny because it's like a lot of the, like, some of the expectations that I had were exceeded. Like, obviously, coming to the US in 97, I think you still had like internet cafes and like going to
Mm,
the mall was like an experience. Like now the malls aren't as great, but like um seeing high speed internet, like internet wasn't a thing because still to call overseas you have to use like a phone card and like it's kind of delayed, but being able to like see AOL like using the disk and things like that, like coming basically coming here as a young kid where it's like, wow, you have like all these opportunities. You have more than
yeah,
like
yeah,
2 to 5 channels. Like there's so many things on TV going on. There's like so much activity. Like the roads are paved. Like the
yeah.
school systems are this. Like people are nice. You don't get whippings in school. It's like, oh, it's illegal to
Yeah,
get whippings in school. So it's like,
yeah.
hey,
That my
if you
brother
hit me
has some
out,
stories about that from Africa,
yeah.
about the whoopings in school. But
Like they line you up and just be like, okay, like
uh,
here's what's gonna happen. And it's like, oh no,
yeah,
you can't do that over here. Like they'll get
nope.
called child services.
Yeah, yeah. I feel really really fortunate to have been born where I was born. Um,
Yeah.
not just in the country I was born in, but also in the community
Mhm.
and the family I was born in. Things weren't perfect all the
Yeah.
time, but um, but compared to a lot of other people, and probably compared to most of the world, I got pretty lucky
Yeah.
with my childhood and where I come from. Um, so that's good.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think
but
I
yeah,
could say the same for myself too, because it's like I could have grown up on the um horror side of things and not have certain opportunities afforded to me to be able to come to America. But even like
yeah,
while in Cameroon, it's like there were still opportunities afforded to me there. So it's like
yeah,
I've also lucked out in a way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember like going through villages and stuff, and there'd be all these kids running after the truck, and they'd be barefoot, and their village would just be like these mud huts.
Mhm.
So it's like what kind of opportunity can you get out of that? Like I don't even know if they went to school,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, it's kind of maybe a little depressing to think about, but yeah, like just I mean, it just makes me wonder what some of those kids could accomplish if they just had more, you know.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I mean it's what's interesting about that, it's like that's why I don't know if I'm conflicted about it, but sometimes it's encouraging to see people that decide to go on mission trips or like my sister, my youngest older sister. I don't know why I keep naming her like that, like Phoebe. Um,
hmm,
she started a group with a couple of friends from college, and I interviewed one of them. He's a family friend, Ugo, and they started a project called Selfless for Africa, where basically when they were in college, they were kind of talking amongst themselves like, oh, someone should really do something about this. And essentially they set up like a scholarship fund where they got family friends to raise money to say, okay, we're going to sponsor a kid from Nigeria or sponsor a kid in Cameroon or Ghana or like wherever they were from. That's where they focused their attention on because I think more of them have traveled back to their respective countries over the years and they're like, okay, well, if I can make an impact on one child's life or one family, that could maybe
hmm,
go a longer way despite like government corruption that you may have or things that other people may want to take away from because it's like if I've learned anything, it's that if you're going to do something effectively, you kind of have to do it on the hush hush and know
mm,
local people to work with because otherwise it's like if you I guess it's the same way here. If you tell too many people your goals, like other people might have ulterior motives and then
yeah,
they'll undermine what it is that you're doing very quickly because it's
yeah,
either like the crabs in a barrel mentality or just like the oh no, I want to get credit for this or I don't want anybody changing what I've got going on here.
right, right. So do you think like mission trips are more effective than government assistance, like when it comes to helping people in Africa or elsewhere? Because
I,
mission trips really work with people one on one.
yeah,
So it's not, like the way I think about it is it's not just giving them resources, it's also kind of giving them like maybe values because
yeah,
they meet you and they understand you and they see what you're all about. Like for example, if you value hard work, they'll see you're a hard worker.
mm,
If you value honesty, they'll see that you're honest. I think to have success, you need opportunity, but you
right.
also need individual effort and the right decisions. And so, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I can't really speak to um, mission trips because I've never been on a mission trip. But one thing I did look into my last semester of college was an organization called Engineers Without Borders.
Hmm.
And one thing that I liked about it that they did different from what certain missionaries may do is that they look to partner with the community to either build a well or help them with their water purification system. But the way that they partner with them was asking that community what it is that they needed. So they didn't
Hmm.
set out to just say, "Oh, we're going to go do this charity." Because something else I learned from I guess you could call it like a local TED Talk the college did, where they brought in different professionals. And
Hmm.
this one lady, she really criticized charities heavily, where it's like you want to be these, but you present yourself as these but benevolent beings, where it's like, oh, we're going here to save the poor this or the poor that, and it's like you're ruining someone's entrepreneurship spirit. Like someone
Hmm.
is starting a business, and then you just come and you say, oh, we're just going to dump a whole bunch of stuff here, and it's like, okay, there's no zeal for them to do anything else because like the stuff you were bringing in you thought, oh, they just need more opportunity, but it's like you didn't ask them what they needed, and it's
Right.
you could have partnered with someone locally and helped them in the way that they needed help. So with like the Engineers Without Borders group, I didn't get to go travel with them, but one of the things that they tell you up front is that we're not a charity. Like if you're coming here to do charity, this is the wrong group for you. Do not
Mm.
do not come to this thinking that you're going here to save these people. These people don't need your saving. And it's like the way that they partner up with the community is that they require them to fund part of the project so
Mm.
that they have skin in the game. Say even
Yeah.
if it's 20, 30%, they're not just going to come and build something and do something up front and be like, okay, well, this didn't take, and they had to learn some of those lessons by trial and error because they
Hmm.
paid someone locally to dig a well and they paid them up front. So once the guys had the money, they didn't have any incentive to finish the work. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it was like, okay, let's maybe pay half up front, and then once you've completed the work, you get the other half. And then also and working with the people locally to build what it is that they needed to build with their local tools. It kind of helped
Hmm.
them be reliant on um, using what's at hand instead of having to like import a whole bunch of things and like um, increase spending and costs that's not necessary. And
Yeah.
also teaching people how to maintain things like the well. It's like, okay, if they know how to maintain it, we can work with them and kind of give them some of the skills they need. But when it breaks down, they don't have to throw their hands up and just be like, what do we do now? Like
Hmm.
the white people aren't here or the Americans aren't here. It's
Right.
like, oh no, like we're just gonna fall apart. So that's the one thing that I got from that group that was positive in a way to where I'm like, okay, you're asking for people what they need for one. So it's like you're respecting them. You don't just go off of the assumption that
Right.
you're just here to solve all their problems. And then
But
secondly, it's like you're willing to work hand in hand with them to where you both get something out of it.
right.
But
But
they're
but you're also requiring something out of that.
right, right.
Like
That's
yeah.
that's
Like
what I liked about it.
yeah. I think that's a good idea. A good way to do it.
But it's like
Yep.
I've never been on a mission trip, so I can't really speak to how effective it is. Like maybe I've
Hmm.
seen it kind of secondhand from my dad, and it's like I can infer certain things where I'm like, okay, well, if you keep doing something the same way for years and years and years and it's not working, but you're not willing to change your strategy, that's the practice of insanity. But it's
Yeah.
like respectfully, I think I've kind of gone the route of keeping my opinions to myself in certain routes because I'm
Yeah.
like, if if my opinion was really valued or if it was asked for, then I would give it. But if it's not, it's like better not spend the time because it's like we could like you and I could sit here and talk over and over, but it's like if it wasn't of any benefit to you or if you got tired of hearing my voice, I would hope that you would wise up and be like, okay, like I got I got stuff to do tomorrow. It's a Sunday night. Like I
Right.
gotta go do my own thing. But other times it's like I kind of grew up in a culture of maybe you suffer in silence sometimes and it's like this sacrifice thing where you think you're doing something well meaning for other people. But I think
Hmm.
kind of coming to America and having like a Western mindset in a way of like you there's a sense of like mutualism, and I'm sure we have it back home too, but it's like there's a common sense play in effect to where it's like you want to respect people, you want to have respect for your elders, but at the same time, if something's not working to your benefit, like you
Hmm.
got to know when to step back and just like regroup and be like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. Like all of
Yeah.
life can't always be struggle just because you come from literally working in the mud, living in the mud, like having dirt floors and things like that. That doesn't have to be life forever.
Yeah. 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 So I think that kind of boils down to like setting boundaries for one, but also,
100%.
yeah, but also knowing when you have to take action yourself. Um, I know kind of a tenet in Christianity is to let God take control. You were
Yeah.
kind of talking about this before. I think like I think the best way to interpret that is to think of it in the sense that there's certain things you can't control, and you
Mhm.
shouldn't try to control the things that you can't control. But
Right.
there's things that
Right.
you can control. And so like in those situations, like you shouldn't just let God steer you. You sometimes you have to take the reins and make your own decisions.
Right. And the
Yeah.
funny thing about that is I was given I was told about this book called Boundaries, and it was written
Hmm.
by two doctors. And the thing that's I appreciated about it is that they spoke to it from a Christian perspective, where it's like a lot of people that grew up with the Christian faith is like, so many things are mistaught or mislearned to where you're like, oh, well, if I have boundaries, then I won't be a good person. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not what the Bible says at all in context. And it's like, here is proof as to why you need boundaries. Like, you can't just be walked all over because it's like you hear about stories where there are these battles that are fought and you have warrior people, this, that, and the other. And it's like, there's a lot more to this here, and it's been like a neat discovery process as an adult to where it's like I don't have to get permission to go learn something different than what I was taught, and I don't have
Yeah.
to like constantly plead for like attention and affection to like start to get my needs met and to even decide what it is that I want next. Because like you talk about with the opportunities that are afforded to you, it's like on the one hand, you see the extremes of like first world, third world, but
Hmm.
then seeing that people in the first world still have homeless people, they suffer just as much. In other cases, they suffer worse. It's like mental health doesn't seem to be as big of a crisis or like Uh, well, I mean, maybe it is its crisis, but it's not the first focus because, like, in a third world country, someone's maybe more focused on eating, and like
Yeah.
trauma is the same across like people. Everyone has individual like experiences that affect them in different ways, and they process it differently. It's like some people it breaks them, other people they find ways to get through it. But sometimes it almost seems like the more information you have in certain cases, it can almost cripple you to where you become paralyzed with like, I've got so many decisions to make. And then other times it's like, um, the less decisions you have to make or the less opportunities, it's like, well, I can only try A or B. And it's
Hmm.
like if A doesn't work, B has to work. And if B doesn't work, then it's like maybe I'm screwed. But it's weird how like the dynamics each place kind of has taught me something different to where I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad that I'm in a first world nation now, but
Hmm.
also I don't have to keep certain third world mentalities, but at the same time there's like certain things in the first world where I'm like I don't have to like carry problems and stress every single day. Like if there's
Hmm.
a alternate route to work that I can take, I'd rather take that. Or if there's a less stressful job that's not so mentally taxing, I can take that route because it works for my personality, or works to my benefit.
Right. And so basically what you're saying is opportunity comes in the form of choices. Is that what you think
And
that's a good way to put it? So like
in
in the
some
States,
ways,
yeah. So like in the States, you have a lot more choice of what route you can take
yeah.
and
But
of
it
what you can control.
but like it's not, I guess I'm kind of trying to say it's not like a blanket thing. Like obviously there's like a huge discrepancy between like having choices available to you versus not having them at all. And it's like that's not
Hmm.
something you can control. Like you kind of
Right.
born where you're born, and then you get to choose from there. But like having the internet now, being able to like record a podcast and do this things, like the clips and stuff like that you come across on social media is very different. Like um the things you I paid attention to in high school are maybe different now in college, but like if I want to watch certain things, the algorithm learns that, and that's what it pushes to me. Like people argue
Hmm.
about like TikTok and things like that where it's almost like lulling people to sleep. And then other people where it's like being able to travel, like you've been able to travel and say, okay, I'm going to go experience these different cultures. It's like that's a choice that you're making. But in order to
Hmm.
make that choice, you have to save enough money to make the trip. You've got to be able to willing to sacrifice certain things from your life that you say, okay, I want this, so I'm going to do something else as a result.
Yeah.
As to where somebody may be looking at you and be like, "Oh, Steven's so lucky. He's white. He went to school. I didn't have a chance to go to school." And it's like, yeah, but like you didn't just go to school and just ace everything. You had to like
Right.
you had to be intentional with it in some regards. It's like, yeah, there's a little bit of truth in bag A, but there's also a little bit of truth in bag B. But in order
Right.
to like go the direction that you go, you have to like mix and match your choices and decide where you're going to go. And
Yeah. Absolutely.
it seems like it's always like a mindset thing, but
I think so.
it's not to say that if you're in one place you can't go somewhere else. And like if you're I'm not trying to say like everybody's got to pull themselves up by their bootstrap, or just like, oh, everyone's like screwed. It's like I'm
Well,
trying to
everybody has
get
to
a
be responsible for themselves.
right,
I
right,
think. Yeah. That's not to say that they don't deserve help,
right,
but
right.
yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
thanks for
No
bailing
worries.
me out there. I was sitting there like treading water, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
"Oh,
Yeah, you're a minute ago you're talking about my travel and how some people might think I'm really lucky, and then saying that I had to make choices for that. That's actually true. I remember, before I went on my big long trip, the one that was over a year,
mm,
I saved a lot of money for that. Not just money to do the trip, but to have money when I got back. So
right,
I'd be, in a good financial state. I remember going to the dentist shortly before I left. I was telling the hygienist at the dentist what I was going to do,
mhm.
and she's like, "Oh, you must have been saving a lot of money." I was like, "Yeah, I've been eating a lot of rice and chicken," and she started laughing, but it was true. It was
Yeah,
true because like I remember I bought this big ass 20-pound bag of rice,
mm,
and the only reason I got all this rice is because it was the cheapest carb I could buy.
mm,
Because I wanted to save money, like because I didn't want to get like you know, a $5 loaf of oat bread where I could have rice,
right,
just to, like, it's just the baby steps and a little bit that I saved. And then, I wasn't eating lobster or steak. Like
yeah,
I ate a lot of chicken. I ate bologna. That's what I ate. Um, and I did other things too. Like I started driving for Uber,
mm,
on Friday and Saturday night. That sometimes that was kind of fun actually, but I do that rather than going out with my friends, right? So,
yeah,
I made a little bit of money and I saved a little bit of money too. Um, I shared my home,
yeah,
usually with friends, so that wasn't too bad. But at the same time, I had to sacrifice some privacy
right.
for that and share my personal space, so yeah, there's definitely things I had to do to prepare for that. Like it just wasn't all luck.
Right. You probably had
Uh,
to sacrifice a relationship too if you're going to be gone for a year.
yeah. You mean like a romantic relationship?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, I was single when I did it. To be honest, I kind of wanted to be single
Mm,
at that time.
right.
But I've actually met a lot of people that travel, a lot of couples that travel together. I've
Mm,
met several actually, like a lot of married couples. Um, so I mean, you can definitely you can definitely do it as a couple and have a great time.
right.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
yeah. But yeah, after it was all said and done and I finished, like I kind of thought back on it and like I kind of realized it wasn't really that hard to do. I just kind of had to have a plan
Yeah,
and I had to be disciplined with my plan.
right.
So, um,
That, that's a good
yeah.
point because I think, like I was telling you earlier, I just moved here recently, and kind of the area that I moved to originally for the job, it was an opportunity which was kind of not expected, but I was like, hey, I'll take a leap of faith, so to speak, and get back into this engineering thing because it was it's interesting because it's like you go to school for one thing, and the hope and the dream potentially is that like you get to do what it is that you studied for. And when
Hmm.
we come from like an engineering background, it gives you an opportunity to have a career or a more stable job that you're not just going to get run off of, or like it has some stability with it where you can put money aside for retirement or think a little bit further ahead to be like, okay, I need 6 months of rent saved up, or like in the event that I don't have work, do I have money to support myself? And then like in the event that you do have a family, like are they taken care of,
Hmm.
or like different things like that. I haven't had to maybe think that far, but being able to have a little bit stored away as a nest egg is a good thing. And then
Oh, absolutely.
making the sacrifice of like initially coming down, moving into like a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom house, it's like it was the only thing available at the
Hmm.
time. And I was like, oh, this it's also practical where it's like having an extra room at the very least helps to have a space where you can record and you can be like, okay, if I want to do a little bit of work outside of work, I can keep it in this room. And then my bedroom is like for sleep. Like
Hmm.
I don't need to be stressed or take other things in there that I don't want in there. I can kind of like separate and compartmentalize my life. And then to go from that to realizing, okay, like I've been pretty diligent financially for like a good close to 10 years at this point, but then seeing that, okay, I just moved. How much am I making? How much is the rent? Like,
Hmm.
I don't think like the smart thing is to keep your rent maybe around 30% of what you make or somewhere in there to where like you don't want to be basically turning your paychecks over to pay your rent because then
Right.
you're not really living or making any money for the future. So then
Yeah.
when I saw that that wasn't working to my benefit, it's like I need to downsize because I've got this extra bedroom that I'm not really using, and um you're basically you're making ends meet, but at what cost? And then you're if you're building debt on top of it, I'm like, I'm almost losing money working, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, I can't um, get another job immediately because it'd be more stressful to like have to relocate within a year of like just locating when you're trying to like kind of settle down a little bit. So it's like, okay,
Hmm.
downsize to an apartment where it's kind of like student housing, and people that live work there,
Hmm.
or you have students that live there and you also have people that work professionally or just work in their own capacity. So it's like the rent was a third of what I was paying. So I was like,
Oh,
that would make it to where I'm essentially giving myself a raise, but actually I'm cutting my expenses, and then I don't
yeah.
have to worry about utilities, don't have to worry about trash, internet, like all that's already included. And I was like,
And that
okay,
was in the student housing, you said?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
proximity to work, it worked well.
Yeah.
And that's something I took advantage of within a year of moving down to the area. And then
Okay.
just over a year and a half, maybe close to 2 years, like I stayed there, and it had kind of its issues where it's like coming home and having peace of mind was like this isn't gonna work. Like having
Yeah,
someone DJing at 10, 4 in the morning, I was like, I don't
yeah,
like this. And I spoke with my counselor and she always kind of points to the getting my mind right and looking at things on the brighter side. It's like, hey, he could be out in the streets like selling drugs, doing something else. He's putting his positive energy into this thing. And it's like
yeah.
you're gonna have to separate yourself from where you're at. Like look at what it is that you're getting from this and
Hmm.
remember why it is that you moved here versus
Yeah.
like, um, oh, this is terrible, this is that, this is that. And it's like, okay, well, I can do that. And I wouldn't say it's like brainwashing yourself, but maybe it is in a way to where it's like you're
Well,
doing away with what's not serving you and you're focusing on what's important.
right. You're focusing on your goal and you're
Right.
tolerating the trade-offs. Because I
Yeah.
mean, there's going to be trade-offs with almost every decision, I think. But like you said, you're probably able to save a lot more money that way.
Yeah,
Um,
I was. And then
yeah.
up until I think I renewed my lease, and then this other time around, I was like, I it's like I gave it a shot for a year, over a year, and I'm like, I need something else. And then this place came available where it was 2 bedrooms and is
Uh-huh.
like connected to a duplex, but there's like somebody over there on the other side, but I don't really see them. It's removed from the city, so it's a lot less hectic to get
Okay.
home. And like just from the time of moving in, I was like, "You hear that? Wow, that's quiet." I'm like, "I haven't felt that in a minute." And it's like it just
Yeah.
made me smile and being able to get things in and kind of remembering some of the principles I've learned from other people where it's like, so long as the space that you're living in is, clean and orderly, it puts your mind in order. And like I was telling
Yeah.
you before, I was looking for the ring light and I set it up and I was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't put the charger with it, but I'll find it eventually. It's just not important right now." But
Right.
being able to buy a day bed from someone that was moving around town and getting a washer and dryer for a reasonable price, I was like, okay, my bed that's been in the closet for about 2 years now, I found out that half of it doesn't blow up like it did before. And I'm like, well,
Oh,
it might be the end of its life cycle because I've had it for 10 years and is a sleep number. That's why it's able to like break down into three different
oh.
boxes.
So
And
wait, it's inflatable? Is that what you said? 'Cause you said it
yeah,
blows up.
right. So it's like you have the box frame, which is
Uh-huh.
it's made out of plastic, but it you have like a long box that has the outer parts of the box, and
Okay.
then you have like this big squares that basically go on top and make it firm. So then
Okay.
you cover that, and then you put the outside of your mattress together, and then they have these
Okay.
2 inflatable things that make it your sleep number. So, like,
Got it. Got
whenever
it.
you're setting your sleep number, it inflates it to whatever pressure
Mm,
you want it. So if you want it really firm, it'll be, like, from 100 working its way down, and if you
got
want,
it.
like, a soft feel, you'd be down to, like, the 35s or something like that.
Okay.
So it's like from 2014 when I started working after graduating and then being on the road for like 2 years, going from like Louisiana to um, Illinois, back to Georgia, like I was able to move around with my bed and basically break it down myself, pack it in a U-Haul, and drive it from state to state. And then even when I went home to my parents and came out to Puerto Rico where we met, it's like it was basically sitting in a corner somewhere. And then when I moved down here, I set it back up, and then moving into the apartment, I just stuck it back in the closet. So then it's like I was able to have my bed and my bike in a one bedroom apartment while
Hmm.
I had access to what I needed immediately within my room. And it's like it worked. Like one of my coworkers made fun of me to say, "Oh, so how's your storage closet doing?" And I was like, "It works pretty well. It's got a nice bathroom and keeps the lights on, so it's not too bad."
Yeah, I'm still kind of a nomad myself. I don't really have much that I take around with me, just kind of a couple suitcases. But
Yeah.
do you know where I am now? Did I tell you that?
I think San Fran.
Yeah, yeah, San Francisco. So I've been here about 6 months. But but yeah, just
Is
kind
it
of
as
living the
bad as
nomad life.
people is it as bad as people say it is?
San Fred, no, no. I mean,
Gotcha.
it does have issues.
Mm,
There's certain parts of town where you see lots of homeless, lots of
mm,
mental illness, like things like schizophrenia and stuff.
ooh,
Like you'll see people talking to themselves, stuff like that. Uh, they'll be on drugs, so they'll be all sleepy. Like
yeah,
I see people sleeping standing up sometimes, which is
ooh,
kind of weird. But that's what I see.
right,
So yeah, like there's definitely issues, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's out of control. It's
right.
just it's just there. You can see it. It's obviously an issue, but like uh, as far as crime goes, there is a lot of crime, but it's like petty crime. So
Mm,
it's like drug addicts breaking into cars and stuff. Like
yeah,
there's not really a lot of people getting shanked or anything like that.
gotcha.
I,
I mean
I don't think they
that's
have like
positive.
yeah yeah I don't think they have an issue with gangs or anything like that. So um, but yeah, like San Francisco is a beautiful city. I actually really like San Francisco.
Nice.
It's expensive, and there's
Yeah,
parts of it that don't feel nice just because the drug addicts tend to congregate around certain areas, I think. But
yeah.
um, and
Like,
then and then there's actually lots of state parks here too,
mm,
which I didn't realize before I came. But like pretty much, it seems like almost the whole coast is like a big state park.
yeah.
It's forests and stuff, so beaches, whatever.
It's funny because I visited San Francisco a couple years back, and it was funny because I think we went to San Jose
Hmm.
initially, and then went over to San Francisco because I think they're like an hour apart or something like that. And being able to go to the Golden Gate Bridge, go to like a winery, like and yes, it's definitely more expensive, but
Yeah,
it was an
yeah.
experience where it's I don't think I've ever spent that much on breakfast, but like tried the $1 million bacon or something like that. And it's like, oh yeah, we'll do two orders of it. And then when you see what one order looks like, it's like, geez, like maybe one would have been enough. Like I've never seen a piece of bacon look as big as my arm or as big as my head. And like is just like so filling, and the cultures of it were interesting, where like I think at the time trying to do the frugal thing, it's like, oh, I'll stay in a Airbnb, and it's
Hmm.
like you stay in an Airbnb, say in Atlanta or like another city, and like you have access to the whole house or you have access to a room, and it just seems like you have more room. But then where it stayed at the time, it was like you have like the houses, they're all stuck together, so it's like the townhouse type, and then
hmm.
the room is like it's not like a New York room, like people describe it like, "Oh, here's your closet," and like like there's a skit someone does where it's like someone pops out of the closet, it's like, "Oh, where's the kitchen or where's the garage?" or this, that, and the other, but it was much tighter. But to your point, it's like it's definitely an experience, and seeing those state parks and things like that you can walk around in was pretty neat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Prior to this, I was in Japan. I don't know if you
Mm.
knew that. Um, yeah, I was in Japan for like 6 months, and then before that, Hawaii for about 2.5 months.
Oh, wow.
And then North Carolina before that. So,
All vacations or all work?
no, no, working. So I got, I was actually laid off of my job for like almost 20 months, I think,
Mm.
after the Puerto Rico thing ended. And so
Yeah,
they said they're going to hire me again after 6 months. But 6 months came and went, and nothing came along. So I just decided to get a master's degree, which I had considered doing even before I went to Puerto Rico.
right.
And so even before I decided to apply, I'd been teaching myself Python and stuff.
Mm.
So I went and I started a master's degree in data science, and I just like chugged along in that for like almost a year.
Yeah,
That's pretty much all I did. Staying in Michigan, with my mom. And then this opportunity came along. Same company I worked for in Puerto Rico, except this was different work with the Department of Defense, and so I was
mm,
doing utility work on Marine bases.
nice.
So I did that for about 10 months. Um, yeah, and then like immediately after, I got another FEMA contract.
Mm,
So I'm a site inspector again. I'm doing the same thing I was doing in Puerto Rico,
gotcha.
here in California. Yeah.
Have you enjoyed the nomad life?
Yeah, I have it. It has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
Like I'm not really a materialistic person, so it kind of feels good like not have a bunch of stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, like when I sold my house to go on my big trip, um, it kind of felt good just to get rid of everything. Only exception is my actual house. Like
Yeah.
when I sold my house, it kind of felt like it's kind of bittersweet because like there's this thing that I had to take care of,
Yeah.
but like now it was gone, so it almost felt like my dog died or something.
Mm. Yeah.
Like sometimes it was kind of a pain in the ass to take care of it. Go
Right.
mow the grass, go paint, stuff like that. Um, you know, it, but it was mine. It was
Yeah.
mine, and it wasn't anymore. So it was kind of like, well, it's nice I don't have to worry about it anymore. But there's my home for like almost 8 years, or no, almost 4 years.
Wow.
You know, and it was like really mine. It wasn't just a place I was staying in. So,
Right. Right.
um, but yeah, like after that, like I just had like a couple of carloads of stuff, and ever since then, I haven't really had a lot of stuff.
Gotcha.
It's because I move around so much. Like there's no point in having that much stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, as far as the nomad life goes, you know, it's it's good. It's good for some things, bad for others. Like it can be exciting. I get to see a lot of new places.
Mm.
I told you earlier before we started recording that I like change. Or no, maybe I
Yeah.
said that when we started recording. But so it's constant change,
Right.
which I like. Uh, but it's almost like starting over
Yeah.
sometimes. Every time I go to a new place, just with my social life, but if I don't have friends there already, I have to go out and meet friends if I want to have friends. Um, and then professionally too, because a lot of times I'm working with a new team.
Mm.
So, it's kind of like that trust building process with a new team that you have to do and stuff. So, um, but those are the downsides. I mean, it's hard to have a relationship when you move around this much.
Yeah.
Um, Unless you can find somebody that can travel with you.
Right.
Um, but it's also good for like wealth building. Uh,
Yeah.
because like I'm not like I don't pay rent, right? I don't have a mortgage, so um, so it's good for that too. So
Yeah.
I think I'll keep doing it for a while if I can.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you think it for you, is it like an age thing, or once you feel like you want to settle down a little bit, have you felt any of that yet?
Yeah, there was kind of two parts to that. One is I have a wealth goal.
Mhm.
So once I reach that, I'd stop.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is if I find something to settle down for.
Right.
Uh, but like that's just, I mean, that's kind of hard to do when you move around so much.
Right. Those are two good
So
goals.
yeah, yeah. So
Because
we'll see.
yeah, it's funny. A mentor of mine, he always sends us these videos, and it just feels good to be a part like of a men's group where I heard someone describe it recently, like a almost like a campfire, being able to talk with other men, where it's that if you're in a relationship, you don't want to bring all your stresses to that relationship to where it's like you disturb the peace that you work so hard to establish. But being
Yeah,
able to talk to other guys, it's like you you can hear other stories and kind of relate to things, or have other people pick you up that are like stronger than you, or like peers, so to speak, to where it's not a burden to them to have to deal with, or it's not destabilizing. And like one of the things I got from a group from a video one of our mentors sent was this gentleman by the name of Scott Galloway, and he wrote a
hmm
book called The Algebra of Wealth. And
mm,
the way he talked about it was very practical. And one of the things he said is that you do want to have a number in mind, um, to kind of give you something to work towards, whether it's like, I
right.
want to make this much. And then it's like, once you reach that number, you can kind of reevaluate and be like, okay, well, here's how my life can be set up to go forward. And then
Yeah,
it takes away part of that stress to be like, okay, I don't have to worry about, is rent going to be paid? Is food going to be on the table? Like once like your bare necessities are met, food, shelter, clothing, like you're you're less it just feels like life is a little bit easier to do. Like for me, one of the things I found useful was like wearing a uniform, so to speak, is kind of
Hmm.
like less decision fatigue. I don't need to wake up and be like, what am I gonna put with this outfit and that? Like there is value to like dressing up and things like that, but doing construction work has been helpful in knowing, okay, here's how I lay out my clothes. Jeans and shirt, or this and that, this and that. Like when I go out into the field, I know we're wearing fluorescent things because it's just one less layer that I have to wear. And I see either long sleeve, short sleeve, and then throw on the jeans, work boots. Like I could get up and be dressed in 5 minutes without
Yeah.
having to process like how many things do I have to do? And like, oh, do I have to shave my head? Do I have to do this? Do I have to groom? It's like, yes, grooming is important, but like the less decisions I've had to make in recent years and like be able to focus on work while I'm at work and then be able to take time off from break or like every 2 hours or like if I'm getting bogged down with something, it's like, okay, let me regroup, take a walk, reset. Okay, now my head's clear. I can do this one project, get it done instead of trying to like entertain five different things. And
Hmm.
then 8 hours go by and I'm like, what did I do?
Yeah, there's like the kind of one thing I've learned is that there's not really such a thing as multitasking. Like if you want to work efficiently, what I do is I make a list of things to do
Mhm.
and I focus on one at a time. Like I try not to hip hop back and forth if I can help it.
Right.
And honestly, sometimes I still do just because my I'm a little scatterbrained like that. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, definitely focusing on one thing and then finishing it before you move
Right.
on to the next. That's the most efficient way to work, I think.
Yeah. It definitely feels good when you finish something to be like, okay,
Yeah.
that's off my plate. Like being able to move recently, and it felt like one of the easier moves where I was able to get help from a coworker or a couple coworkers, and
Hmm.
like having it offered to me and just being like, oh yeah, I could use help because I remember when I moved from the the first house to the apartment, and it's like I rented a U-Haul. I kinda gave myself a week or 2 weeks to move, and I boxed everything up, but then I think I even had help once I got to the apartment complex from someone that was just available, but, like, running boxes up and down to the 3rd story was, like that's a little bit exhausting, and, like, I did it maybe 2016, and it's like
Okay.
I've done it a couple of times, but, like,
Yeah.
having to go up 3 flights of stairs versus being on the 1st floor works a lot easier, like, so
Yeah.
much easier.
Yeah.
And then to your point, it's like when you start looking around at all of the stuff you're carrying, I'm like, "Why do I have this?" Yeah, that
Yeah.
needs to go. Like, college notes, I haven't looked at them yet. Like, yes, they're organized. Yes, they could be like this, that, or the other, but it's like, let's get real. Like, we're not doing anything with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you never really realize how much stuff you have until you have to move it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember when I sold my house, I tried to sell most of my stuff too. And I remember kind of towards the end, like I just kind of piled everything up in my living room. And
Mm.
I posted a photo on Facebook Marketplace. I was like, free, come and get it. I just took a picture of like the whole pile.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of stuff I was able to sell, but you can't sell everything.
Right.
So I'm kind of one of those people that doesn't like things to go to waste either. So
Yeah, that's a good point. But
yeah.
even with that, it's like I've had to learn. I was telling you about a friend of mine, and like just different people, even like meeting yourself, where it's like people come into your life and they teach you different lessons and things like that. And even growing up with a certain mentality where it's like you don't want to go, don't want things to go to waste, especially when it comes to like food. And like you remember
Hmm.
not always having enough, but like not always going to bed hungry, but like there's a notion that like, oh, you eat so that the other people that are starving won't feel as bad where you're just like being wasteful. But it's like at the
Hmm.
same time having the notion recently where it's like, okay, I can eat, but I'm not a trash can. Like there's portion sizes. And like
Right.
obviously once I'm 34 now, so it's like I remember my older brother telling me it's like you're secretly committing murder, like eating all the food that you're eating. But it's like once you hit 30 and you start to go past that, the evidence is gonna start to reveal itself. Like it's
Hmm.
gonna show itself. And like all those bodies
Yeah.
you've been killing with all the food that you've been eating, it's like
Yeah.
it's not gonna be as easy for you to hide it away. And it's like I started to balloon up a little bit and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, it
Actually,
definitely gets a lot easier when you get older.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, my diet now is like a lot of I'm 38 now. I just turned 38 like last week, but
mm,
um or almost 2 weeks ago now.
yeah,
But yeah, like my diet's like largely vegetables, like but
yeah,
just like raw vegetables. I
right,
remember when I was working on the Marine bases, I um if I was able to, I'd bring like this Tupperware container. It was just like chock full of like carrots and broccoli and beans and stuff.
right.
And like some people I was working with just kind of look at it like, what the heck is this guy eating? It's just like a big Tupperware thing of vegetables.
Yeah,
Yeah. But like honestly, I felt a lot better just eating a bunch of vegetables every day. You know, and
yeah.
I'd get some protein from the beans. And then like for dinner, I'd have like a meat protein usually. But
That's actually one of the things I struggled with when we were in Puerto Rico was like finding fresh
yeah,
vegetables where I was
yeah,
like,
big time.
that's one of the reasons where I was like, okay, it's hard. I'm having a hard time cooking and like I door dashed a whole bunch of things or Uber ate a lot of things, but I didn't make the best decisions with that where there was a Denny's at the hotel that I
Hmm.
stayed at until moved over to the west side of the country and it was like I kept ordering pancakes and stuff and stuff, but it's like going out to a restaurant, not being able to just request like simple vegetables. I'm like, I don't know if I can stay here long term because I'm like, I just need to like just eat like an apple or like just a salad. Like I don't want a lot. Like I want to be able to maybe cook some meat here from time to time, but like
Hmm.
I need fruits and vegetables. That's what
Yeah,
I grew up on, and I my body just seems to do a lot better when I can have just natural, simple fruits and not like everything being processed and boxed up.
yeah. I hear you, man. That, that reminds me when we are in Puerto Rico. There's so many plantains in Puerto Rico. Like
Mm.
the mofongo that they have, it's just stuffed plantain basically.
Yeah,
And and I remember you making a comment like oh this like all these plantains reminds me of home or something.
yeah, yeah.
I was
Because
like that's interesting. I was like I've never eaten plantains before. That was like my first time eating plantains, I think.
mm,
Yeah, but you like you spent part of your life in Cameroon. I guess your mom still cooked with plantains even
yeah,
after
yeah.
coming to the States. Yeah.
Yeah, because, like, that's one thing my mom has still does to this day
Hmm.
she's kept a lot of the good habits of
Hmm.
balanced meals, like, she cooks a lot of, vegetables, but
Hmm.
also will mix in meats, so, like, it'll be like a stew of, greens, but then there'll be, like, chunks of meat in there, whether it's chicken or beef, like, we don't really do pork, yeah, I think maybe she's tried it a little bit, but it's not really I don't think it's a religion thing, it's just like a it just doesn't, we just don't I don't think we do much of that, but it'd be like fish, chicken,
Hmm.
beef, and maybe like a family friend or something that had, given us, deer meat or something like that before, and she'll, like, mix it in
Venison.
and different
Yeah.
things like that, and it's always been a balance, but, like, plantains, everything, like, around the equator, tropics, we
Hmm.
seem to have the same diet where it's, like, rice and beans, corn, like, I went to visit, Thursday, I think I drove up Thursday night and probably drove back Friday night from North Georgia to South Georgia, and always like I gave my mom a heads up because whenever you pop up and surprise her, she's kind of upset. Like, you didn't give me time to cook. And it's like once you're getting ready to go, it's like, okay, well, how many of these do you want? Like, how many things of couscous do you want? How many things of beans? Like, uh she'll she has a garden at the house. So then she has different greens and stuff like that that will grow and they'll come into bloom. And I think recently she's gotten a lot of squash. So I took two
Okay.
things of squash back and the greens, like she'll cook them down like whenever they come into season and basically boil them and then freeze them to be able to like in a sense meal prep. So then I think she sent 3 of those back with me before I maybe took like 10, and
Okay.
I was like, I could take this individual ball of green and, like, thaw it out, cook it, and mix it in with, like, whatever seasoning I wanted to mix it in with, and it's like,
Okay.
that helps me out and just kinda reminding myself like, "Okay, I can eat out, but at the same time, I have food that I can eat at home," and then, being able to take some of the tips that she's done over the years, I'm like, "Oh, yeah." But definitely plantains, staple food you gotta go
Yeah.
with, and, like, I like Jamaican food, just, like, the way they make things, and just anyone from, like, the islands, a lot of the foods,
Hmm.
like Mexican food, I
Hmm.
really like just because it's very it can be very light, but it's also very filling with the grains and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Mexican. Oh, I love tacos del store.
Mm.
It's my favorite. And if you go to Mexico, there's like one in every corner.
Yeah,
It's fantastic.
nice.
But yeah, I remember in Puerto Rico, mofongo, and the plantains was really popular, but also rice and beans was really popular too.
Yeah.
So you said you eat a lot of rice and beans growing up?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because when I came down here, I don't know if it's like a recent development, you know how people develop allergies and things like that? And they
Hmm.
told me that, I had an allergic reaction after eating a pizza, and come to find out that I have a wheat allergy, and
A weed allergy?
wheat,
Oh,
wheat.
wheat. I thought you
Yeah,
said
yeah.
weed. I was like,
No,
what was
no,
on
no.
this pizza?
No,
What kind of pizza was
wheat.
this?
And,
Okay.
they were basically saying they did, like, an allergy test after, like, I had a reaction to it, and it felt like my throat was closing up 30 minutes later, so I ran to the emergency room or the, urgent care, and they were able
Uh-huh.
to give me a steroid shot and prescribe me 2 EpiPens,
Oh,
and,
geez.
I was like, I don't know exactly how it developed, but obviously it went from being able to enjoy little, peanut butter crackers to next thing I know, I'm sitting there in the office, and I'm like, that feels weird. So I've got to
Ah.
here like practicing sticking myself with this EpiPen, but then going and doing like the allergy test where it's like a basic food test, and they're like, "Well, here are the things that you like, and you just so happen to be allergic to them now." And it's like wheat, peanuts, mostly like raw peanuts,
Hmm.
rice, and there's a fourth thing, but it's basically like my four favorite things, and I'm like, "Are you serious?" And obviously taking like a daily Claritin or like a daily allergy medicine, like every
Like
other
a
day or
antihistamine.
yeah, doing
Yeah.
something like that has been helpful to where I'm like, I really don't want to stick myself and those EpiPens things aren't cheap. Like the first
Yeah.
time it was okay, but somehow I'm like, okay, how do I go from buying something for like less than $50 and then the next time I come around is like $400 and I'm like, geez,
That's
like
America for you, man.
yeah. But
Yeah.
what was it? What'd you ask me? Sorry.
Oh, I think I asked you about the food you had
Oh,
growing up.
right, right, right,
Yeah, yeah,
rice
yeah.
and beans.
Yeah, rice and beans.
And it's like, you have so many things of beans, and I don't know if you're familiar with couscous, but it's like I'd never seen the one in the store the way that they
Hmm.
have it to where it's almost like a different form of rice, but like the couscous that we grew up with was almost like a ball of fried dough or fried flour or not fried, like boiled flour where you
Hmm.
cook it in you cook it almost like you would cook, grits or porridge or, anything that's kind of like a grain where I guess once you get the chemistry right of boiling the water and having the flour stirred in there, it makes it like this thick, um, thing that's good enough to where it's able to sit on your belly to fill you up with the carbs, but then you can mix it and match it with any sauce. So like you can do like peanut sauce, you can do different greens, you can put things in the greens, and then whatever grain you want as like your base for your couscous, you can have like a rice base, you can have a corn base, you can have a yam base, and like people kind of mix and match these things, and it's like, wow, like you just have a lot of variety to choose from.
So where does that come from? Is there a specific country couscous comes from? Is it,
I don't I don't know if it's a specific country, but
it sounds
like
familiar.
even recently I went and I visited because I'm in South Georgia, like
Hmm.
Tallahassee and
Okay.
Jacksonville are the two closest cities down in Florida. And it's like I visited Tallahassee, which is also like the home of the Seminoles for FSU. Which I didn't I didn't realize that for some reason, but it's neat when you get to travel and you're like, "Oh, okay, this is where things are proximity-wise, it's not a school trip." So, you get to
Hmm.
take your time and you get to be your own tour guide. But
Right.
they had this mission, I think they call it like Missions San Luis, where basically it was a settlement where Native Americans and the Spanish had a community that they basically built up, and they talk about like their diet that they use, and like they have like a lot of corn, rice, and things like that. And I don't know if couscous is like a native thing, if it's like
Hmm.
it's just what I grew up with. And I know like what they sell like at the Aldi or at Walmart, you might see it in a box. That's a little bit different than what we're used to making. But
It's probably more processed and has more preservatives and stuff.
well, I don't know if it
Or not
is. It
really.
it just seems like it's a different consistency. You know how
Mm, okay.
rice is like you have your long grain rice and your short grain rice?
Hmm.
Couscous is almost like, if at least the one that's in the store, it looks like it was cooked in the way maybe my mom would cook it, but then um dried to where they're like little tiny balls. So like if you take a grain of rice and like cut it into 5 pieces, that's what a thing of couscous would look like. But
Mm,
it's like airy. It's almost like popcorn rice. That might be
okay.
how I describe it. But like if
Interesting.
you go to any store, especially like in San Francisco, you might find like a Trader Joe's or like any grocery store. You could find it in there and just be like, okay, like it's different. It's like a rice, but it's different.
Is it spelled with a K or a C?
See,
C. So
yeah,
CUS dash US.
something like that.
Okay.
Even like if you speak it into your phone, I think like Google would come up with it like couscous. Let
Okay.
me see. Let me make sure I'm giving you the right spelling. Couscous. Uh, maybe not. Couscous. Oh, Couscous. So it's
Oh, that
basically
sounds,
the same word
yeah, that
written
sounds
twice.
French.
Yeah,
Couscous.
it must be a French thing.
Oh.
So it's like what what they sell in the store. I didn't know that was a thing until saw my sister-in-law cooking it with my brother, and
Hmm.
it might be like a West Africa thing because she's from Senegal, which is like over in this area, and we're like West Central Africa, closer like to Nigeria.
Hmm. Got it. And in Senegal, they speak French too, I think.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Got it. All right, man.
We better wrap it up.
Yeah, yeah. I think I gotta cook dinner and stuff. So it was
Man,
nice talking to you again, bud.
likewise. Thank you for doing this, and I appreciate the reverse interview a bit. And it's always good catching up because I mean it's been a minute and a lot of
Yeah.
life has happened since then.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to hear about your experience about coming from Cameroon. Like, I've always kind of wondered about that, but I never really asked you, at
Yeah.
least not to a great extent. But yeah, I always find it interesting when people come here from a different country, especially if it's somewhere that's a lot different.
Mhm.
Like moving to the States from Canada, it's probably not as intense as moving here from like Iran or Cameroon or something. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's yeah, America's a big mixing pot, and everybody that comes, they you kind of add to the culture a little bit, I think. So, and that can last for generations. So, I
Yeah.
imagine like even your mom's style of cooking. If you have kids, you might cook the same for them. Lots of plantain and stuff. Like on my dad's side, um, his grandfather I think came from Finland. I remember my
Mm.
grandpa still had like a sauna in his basement. Like he built his own sauna. And my dad has a sauna
Mm.
at his cabin. So that's just kind of one of those little cultural things
Yeah.
that stayed in the family for 3, 4 generations. And if I ever own a house again, I might build one too. I
Yeah.
like saunas, but yeah.
It seems like all the rave is saunas and cold plunge here lately, and I'm like,
Oh
it might
yeah,
not
yeah,
be a
yeah, yeah,
bad thing.
yeah, yeah. Probably not.
Cool. Well, thanks for doing this, Stephen, and
Yeah, no
have a
problem,
great
buddy.
night and a good week.
Yeah, you too.